The moment I pushed open the doors of Madison and Company, jewelers in downtown Chicago, I felt something inside me tighten and flutter at the same time. Maybe it was the cool blast of conditioned air or the way the marble floor reflected the overhead lights in soft, perfect patterns under my heels. Or maybe it was because for the first time in a while, I actually let myself believe that my husband was bringing me somewhere special for a reason. Bill was right beside me, his hand resting comfortably on the small of my back, guiding me through the gleaming space. For an instant, I was transported back to our early days, when everything between us was charged with hope and possibility. In that store, surrounded by 1,000 tiny stars catching the light from every angle, I wanted so badly to believe that this was one of those rare moments. The kind that would remind me what it felt like to be chosen, to be wanted. As we entered, Bill immediately gravitated toward the display of men's watches, the classic models lined up like soldiers, their faces polished and unreadable. "Just browsing," he told the attendant who greeted us, his tone casual, too casual, as if he'd rehearsed this. But I saw the hint of mischief in his eyes, a quick, knowing flicker that made my heart trip over itself. He had always been good at hiding things from me, both little and big, especially when it came to surprises. I hovered close behind, pretending to study a tray of engagement rings that sparkled beneath the glass, each diamond set apart from the others, each one waiting for someone to declare it either one. I imagined, just for a moment, what it would be like to receive something extravagant and new. Maybe not an engagement ring. After 10 years of marriage, those days were long gone, but a necklace, or a pair of earrings, something that shimmered and whispered, "You matter. You're seen." It was silly, I told myself, but it was also comforting. That hope wrapped around me like a warm scarf on a cold January evening, protecting me from the drafts of everyday disappointments. I wanted to believe that Bill was up to something thoughtful, that maybe he'd noticed how distant we'd become, how much we needed a spark. While he talked watches with the salesman, I let my gaze wander across the store. The interior was a careful mix of old money elegance and new world polish, gleaming gold frames around the counters, bouquets of white peonies by the entrance, glass display cases that seemed to stretch on forever. I listened to the soft music, piano, barely there, just enough to remind me that this was a world set apart from grocery lists, work emails, and the daily grind. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of the early years of our marriage, the silver bracelet Bill bought me when he landed his first big client, the earrings from our 5th anniversary, which I wore until the clasp broke, the little velvet box I'd once found hidden under his pillow, my name on the gift tag in his messy handwriting. All these memories collided with the present, filling me with bittersweet longing. Bill caught my eye, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "See anything you like?" he asked, teasing, almost boyish. I played along, tracing a finger along the edge of a display, pretending to be absorbed in the jewelry. But inside, my mind raced ahead, picturing all the ways this evening could end. Would he surprise me with a gift, like he used to? Or was this just a practical errand, a way to kill time before dinner? A few other shoppers moved through the store, their voices low and polite. There was a couple in their 60s, the woman holding a ring between two fingers, her face alight with joy. Nearby, a teenage girl with a red backpack tried on charm bracelets, her mother watching with quiet pride. For all of them, this place was a playground of dreams, a space where hope was tangible, something you could buy, wrap up, and take home in a glossy blue bag. As we strolled past the necklace cases, I allowed myself to imagine what it would feel like to be on the receiving end of that kind of magic again. To know that I was still the one Bill wanted to surprise. My fingers brushed against a tray of delicate gold chains. And for a heartbeat, I felt young again, reckless enough to believe that love could still take me by surprise, even after all these years. My reflection flickered in the glass, a woman in her late 30s, hair pulled back in a loose knot, eyes bright with expectation and a trace of uncertainty. I wondered what Bill saw when he looked at me now. Did he remember the girl I used to be? Or had I faded, becoming just another fixture in his world, like the reliable kitchen clock or the stack of unread magazines on our coffee table? I didn't let the sadness settle. Instead, I breathed in the scent of polished wood and expensive perfume, straightened my shoulders, and let my hope burn just a little brighter. Tonight was about possibilities. And for the first time in months, I wanted to believe that Bill had planned something just for me. We made our way toward a row of diamond pendants, their surfaces catching every available speck of light, throwing tiny rainbows across the counter. Bill lingered at my side, his expression unreadable, but his presence reassuring. I let myself lean into the moment, letting my imagination fill in the blanks. Maybe he'd whisper to the saleswoman, point discreetly at a necklace he knew I'd love. Maybe later, back at home, he'd slip a velvet box into my hand with that crooked smile he used to wear when we were first dating. It was the kind of fantasy that kept the best parts of marriage alive, the belief that, even as years went by, there was always room for one more beautiful surprise. I found myself drifting from case to case, letting my fingertips skim the glass, secretly hoping Bill was watching me. There was a time he knew every detail of what made me smile, when he'd spot my gaze lingering on a piece of jewelry or a pair of shoes and later surprise me just because. Maybe, I thought, tonight was his way of telling me that part of us wasn't gone. That somewhere beneath the bills, the work emails, the sleepy goodnights, there was still a spark. He was still at the men's watches, deep in conversation with a well-dressed salesman who seemed to know his stuff. The salesman laughed at something Bill said, and Bill's posture relaxed. His confidence was easy to spot when he was in control. I caught his eye, gave a small, conspiratorial smile, and turned my attention to the delicate rows of necklaces lined up like secret wishes. For a moment, I let my imagination run wild. What if Bill was planning something elaborate? What if he'd noticed me scrolling through Instagram, pausing over the delicate gold heart pendant everyone seemed to be wearing this year? Maybe he'd seen the way my eyes lingered on the little things, tiny gestures, small surprises, simple reminders that I still mattered. I remembered the first time Bill surprised me. We were 24, just starting out in a cramped studio in Lincoln Park. He'd brought home a silver bracelet from a street market, slipped it onto my wrist while we ate takeout on the floor, laughing about how the only furniture we owned was a wobbly coffee table from Craigslist. That bracelet had broken years ago, but I'd kept it in my jewelry box, tangled with forgotten earrings and single studs, a relic from a time when romance felt easy. As I stared at the necklaces, the memory grew sharper. Back then, the gifts weren't expensive, but they always meant something. They were proof of intention, tokens of affection, reminders that even the smallest gesture could carry weight. Now, with Bill beside me in a store like this, where a single piece cost more than our first month's rent, I wondered if he still saw me the same way. A gentle buzz of laughter drifted over from a nearby couple, a young woman in a blue dress standing with her boyfriend as he nervously examined a ring box. I smiled, recalling the fluttery feeling of new love, when everything felt possible and every glance was charged with meaning. I glanced back at Bill. He was watching me now, his face unreadable, but his eyes softer than before. He walked over and stood beside me. For a second, it felt like we were alone in the store. "Anything catch your eye?" he asked, voice low. I shrugged, playing it cool. "They're all beautiful. But you know me, I'm more into the story than the price tag." I was surprised by how true that felt. I didn't need the biggest diamond in the room. I just wanted to feel chosen again. Bill's lips curled into a half-smile, the kind he used to give when he was keeping a secret. "You've always had good taste," he said. His hand lingered on my back a moment longer, the warmth both familiar and a little bit foreign. The salesman returned, holding out a tray lined with watches and cufflinks. "Take your time, Mr. Johnson," he said. "Let me know if anything stands out." I noticed the way the salesman's eyes flicked from Bill to me, assessing us in that subtle, practiced way people in luxury retail do. He couldn't know that my heart was beating faster than it had in months. We wandered over to the far end of the store, past an opulent display of diamond tennis bracelets. For a moment, I could almost believe we were younger, unburdened, just out for an adventure instead of searching for proof that the old magic was still there. I watched Bill's reflection in the glass as he studied the watches. I tried to read his body language, searching for the same signs of excitement I felt. Was he about to pull off a surprise? Or was I just building castles in the air? A wave of nostalgia washed over me. I thought about all the little moments, the birthdays and anniversaries, the lazy Saturday mornings when we'd stay in bed too long, talking about everything and nothing. Those memories lived in small tokens: a mug from a trip to Seattle, the Polaroid from our first road trip to Michigan, a playlist he made for me when I started my first real job. I was so lost in thought that I almost didn't notice when Bill moved a little closer. "You okay?" he asked, his voice so gentle it nearly broke me. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just thinking," I replied. "About how fast time goes. About how some things never really change." He squeezed my hand, and for a second, I thought he understood. Maybe he really did see me. Maybe, just maybe, this was our chance to find our way back. We paused by a display of engagement rings, and I caught myself admiring a simple solitaire, elegant and understated. I laughed softly, embarrassed by my own sentimentality. 10 years ago, I would have rolled my eyes at myself for being so sappy. Now, I cherished every flicker of hope. The store hummed quietly, the sound of soft jazz blending with the muted footsteps on marble. I watched as the salesman approached, and something in his expression changed, a flicker of recognition, a flash of something I couldn't quite place. Bill stiffened ever so slightly, but I was too wrapped up in my daydreams to notice. If only I'd known how quickly hope can curdle into something else. As we drifted deeper into the store, my mood shifted between anticipation and uncertainty. Bill's presence felt simultaneously reassuring and distant, as if there was something bubbling beneath the surface he wasn't ready to share. I tried not to let my nerves show, hiding them behind polite smiles and casual questions about carat weights and gold purity. But my mind kept racing with possibilities, sketching out romantic scenarios and worst-case anxieties in equal measure. We paused in front of a glass display filled with delicate gold necklaces, each one suspended under perfect white light. I leaned in, tracing my gaze along a thin chain adorned with a single, perfectly cut emerald. It was simple, elegant, exactly the sort of thing Bill used to pick out for me when we were dating, back when every gesture felt meaningful. I imagined, just for a moment, what it would feel like to receive something like that tonight. I pictured Bill slipping the box into my hand after dinner, watching my face light up as I realized what he'd done. I wanted so badly to believe we could still share moments like that, that somewhere, under the layers of routine and tiredness, there was still room for surprise. A wave of nostalgia swept over me, as vivid and bittersweet as the scent of spring after a long Chicago winter. I remembered our early years, How Bill would save up for weeks just to buy me something small. How I'd leave notes in his jacket pockets before big meetings. How we'd celebrate minor victories with homemade pizza and cheap wine on the balcony of our tiny apartment. The present felt heavier. The years had brought new responsibilities, mortgages, deadlines, family illnesses, old friends lost to time and distance. Sometimes I wondered if those things had slowly pushed us apart, or if we'd let them, without even realizing. Still, tonight felt different. In the quiet intimacy of Madison and Company, surrounded by other people's wishes and secrets, I allowed myself to hope that Bill was trying. Maybe he'd noticed my fatigue, the way I moved through our days on autopilot. Maybe he missed the old us, too. As we stood together, I caught a glimpse of us in the mirror behind the display. Bill's profile, strong and calm, my face, hopeful and a little vulnerable. I turned to him, ready to say something, maybe to ask what he was thinking, or to share a memory that suddenly felt important. But before I could speak, a familiar voice interrupted the moment. "Mr. Johnson." "So nice to see you again." It came the cheerful greeting from the sales associate, a petite woman in her early 30s with bright red lipstick and an expert smile. She moved around the counter, hands folded politely, and I recognized her from our last visit months ago when Bill came in to have his watch repaired. Bill's reaction was instantaneous, a quick, nervous laugh, too sharp around the edges. He stepped slightly in front of me, as if to shield me from the conversation. "Good to see you too, Sarah," he replied, his voice tight. The saleswoman's eyes darted to me, then back to Bill. "I hope Rachel liked the necklace you picked out last week. That vintage emerald was a beautiful choice. She must have loved it." Time slowed to a crawl. At first, I didn't process her words. I was still smiling, still trying to play the role of the supportive wife, but inside my body froze. Rachel. The name hung in the air like a bad note in a love song. Rachel was not my name. For a moment, I felt as if the walls of the store were moving closer, the marble floor tipping beneath my feet. The hum of music faded into static. My heart beat so loudly in my chest that I wondered if everyone could hear it. Bill opened his mouth, stammering, "Oh, you must be mistaken, Sarah." Didn't." His words tripped over each other, frantic, the way they always did when he was caught off guard. The saleswoman's smile faltered, uncertainty flickering across her face. "Oh, I'm sorry," as she said quickly. "My mistake. I must have mixed up the names." But I saw the truth written all over Bill's face, the panic, the guilt, the desperate wish to rewind time just a few seconds. I stood there, numb, the world spinning around me as I clung to the last shreds of dignity. In that moment, I realized that everything I'd been hoping for was built on an illusion. Every quiet reassurance, every sweet memory, every hopeful glance, they all crashed down in the span of a single sentence. I managed a small, polite laugh, pretending I hadn't heard. But my insides were a storm. Anger, disbelief, humiliation all tangled together, sharp and cold. My fingers tightened around my purse strap, anchoring me to the spot. I felt like I was watching my life from outside my own body, powerless to intervene. Bill's eyes flicked to mine, searching for forgiveness, for some signal that I believed his flimsy excuse. But all I could do was nod and smile, the way women are taught to do when the world is crumbling and there's nothing left but to save face. The saleswoman, eager to move past her blunder, launched into a pitch about their new line of holiday jewelry. Bill mumbled half-heartedly, glancing around as if searching for an escape route. I forced myself to focus, to breathe, to keep the mask in place. I would not let him see me break. Inside, however, something essential had shifted. The delicate thread of trust that connected us had snapped, replaced by a clarity so sharp it hurt. The romantic evening I'd imagined was over before it ever really began. But I knew, even as I forced a smile for the crowd, that I was not the same woman who'd walked into Madison and Company. That night, something was ending, but something else, cold, clear, and utterly resolute, was just beginning. On the outside, I maintained the picture of composure. The polished, unflappable wife, quiet, attentive, maybe just a little bored, but gracious nonetheless. Inside, my world was trembling. Even as the saleswoman chatted about limited edition collections and holiday promotions, my brain replayed her words over and over, as if searching for an escape route in a nightmare. Rachel. The name stuck to me like a stain I couldn't scrub off. My body felt disconnected from my mind, my fingers clutching my purse so tightly my knuckles blanched. I had always thought of myself as calm under pressure, the steady one, but now my heartbeat was hammering and I felt both rooted and adrift. Bill seemed to sense something was wrong, but he was already weaving excuses, one after another, like he could patch this hole with enough words. There must be some mix-up, he said to the saleswoman, trying to recover his familiar easy tone, but I could hear the cracks. Maybe I have one of those faces, you know? She smiled apologetically, ready to believe him, or maybe just eager to move the conversation along. But I couldn't. Not this time. I barely heard their voices, just a murmur in the background as the realization sank deeper. My mind spun through months of small suspicions, late meetings, unexplained charges on a shared card, quiet Saturday mornings when he slipped out for a coffee here and returned smelling faintly of a different perfume. It all added up now, each detail a puzzle piece I'd forced myself to ignore. To everyone else in the store, we probably looked like the perfect couple, a husband and wife out shopping together, making small talk about jewelry, politely laughing at the saleswoman's jokes. Only I knew that, in this moment, everything I thought I understood about my life was slipping out from under me. Bill shifted beside me, his hand returning to my lower back as if to anchor me in place. "Babe, do you want to see the new bracelets?" he asked. His voice was light, almost cheerful, but his eyes were pleading, "Don't make a scene." I almost laughed at the absurdity. A scene? No, that wasn't my style. If I'd learned anything in this marriage, it was the art of swallowing pain with a smile. I nodded, letting him guide me to the next counter, all the while feeling the heat of humiliation burning beneath my skin. As the saleswoman moved to retrieve another velvet tray, I tried to steady myself, taking slow, careful breaths. My gaze flicked to the mirrored wall at the back of the store, catching my own reflection, shoulders squared, face serene, eyes sharp with a hurt I refused to show. I looked at Bill, really looked at him, the curve of his jaw, the anxious set of his mouth, the way he kept glancing at me out of the corner of his eye. Once, his presence had made me feel safe, cherished. Now, all I saw was distance. He picked up a silver bracelet, holding it between his fingers. "What do you think?" he asked. "It's pretty," I said. My voice was even, almost bored. I was surprised at my own restraint, the steadiness in my tone. If Bill noticed, he said nothing. Inside, though, my thoughts had shifted from pain to calculation. I would not confront him here, not with an audience, not while he was still scrambling for control. The moment for tears and accusations would come later, when I was ready and on my own terms. The rest of our visit passed in a blur. I listened as Bill chatted about watches and cufflinks with the salesman, his voice growing louder, more animated, as if he could outtalk the awkwardness that now hung between us. I let him think he'd smooth it over, let him believe his performance was convincing. I smiled, nodded, even admired a few pieces for show. But the decision was already made. Tonight, I would get the answers I deserved. We left the store under a sky turning the color of dusk, the city lights flickering on one by one. Bill suggested dinner at a nearby steakhouse, a my treat, he offered, winking as if nothing at all had shifted. I agreed, not out of hunger, but out of necessity. I wanted time to plan my next move. At dinner, we fell into old patterns. Bill talked about work, about a colleague's promotion, about the traffic on Lakeshore Drive. I listened, asking questions when required, playing my part so well I almost convinced myself I cared. But all the while, my mind was elsewhere, back in the jewelry store, replaying every detail, memorizing the look on his face, the tremor in his hands. He ordered wine, toasted to Eos, and I drank, feeling the heat spread through my chest, softening the edges of my anger. I wondered how many times he'd rehearsed the same performance, how many times he'd hidden behind charm and easy laughter. How many lies had I missed, too trusting, or too scared, to see? When the check came, Bill paid with a flourish, sliding his arm around my waist as we stepped into the cool Chicago night. He hailed a cab, chatting with the driver about sports, as if nothing in the world was wrong. But I could feel the distance between us growing with every block. Back home, our apartment was quiet, shadows stretching across the hardwood floors. Bill disappeared into the bedroom, saying something about answering a few work emails before bed. I stood in the kitchen, poured myself another glass of wine, and opened my laptop. If he thought I would simply forget what happened tonight, he was wrong. I was done waiting for the truth to find me. Tonight, I would find it myself. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car horn drifting up from the street below. I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open, a spreadsheet glowing in the dim light. Bill's footsteps padded softly down the hallway, doors opening and closing, water running in the bathroom. He didn't come into the kitchen. I was grateful for that. With each click of the mouse, I peeled back another layer of the life I thought I knew. I started with the basics: email receipts, online statements, old calendar invites. There was nothing particularly incriminating at first, just the usual mix of bills, insurance notifications, and Amazon orders. But then, patterns began to emerge. Small restaurant charges in neighborhoods we never visited together. Hotel bookings for weekends when Bill claimed he was at conferences. Jewelry store purchases, multiple, and not just from tonight. The name of Rachel kept popping up, a ghost in the machine. There was a dinner reservation at a downtown bistro for two, billed to his card last month. A bouquet of flowers delivered to an address I didn't recognize. The evidence wasn't dramatic, but it was clear. I wasn't imagining things, and I wasn't overreacting. The world I'd built with Bill, the world I believed was safe, had cracks running through it, cracks he'd tried to fill with charm and distraction. Oddly, each discovery brought not tears, but a kind of steady calm. I was done guessing. Now I knew. I scrolled back through my own memories, matching each charge with the nights I'd sat at home alone, telling myself he was just busy. The evenings I made dinner for two and ended up eating by myself. The texts he'd sent, a running late, don't wait up, now revealed as cover stories for something else entirely. Every detail sharpened, burning away the fog of uncertainty that had kept me from asking hard questions. I poured another glass of wine, savoring the bite. No more excuses. No more denial. Down the hallway, I could hear Bill's voice, muffled, talking on the phone. He laughed, the sound light and careless, the way he used to laugh with me. I wondered if he was speaking to Rachel now, or if he had a different story for her, too. Did she know about me? Did she wear that necklace with pride, or guilt, or both? I resisted the urge to storm into the bedroom and demand answers. That wasn't how I wanted this to end. I needed time to think, to plan, to decide what would happen next, on my terms, not his. My eyes fell on the framed photos lining the kitchen counter, Bill and me in Miami, arms slung around each other, sunburned and laughing. Bill pouring champagne at our last anniversary, a silly selfie from a Cubs game. Were those moments real? Or had they become just snapshots of a story that ended long ago? My anger gave way to something colder and more focused. Betrayal wasn't new. I'd seen it happen to friends, watched families unravel on social media, read about it in books and movies. But I'd always believed, somehow, that it wouldn't happen to me. That we were different, that we could weather any storm. Now I saw how easy it was to miss the warning signs when you wanted so badly to believe in someone. But I also saw something else. This wasn't just the end of trust, it was the beginning of something new. A clean break, a reckoning. For the first time in a long while, I felt a kind of clarity. I wouldn't grovel or beg for explanations. I wouldn't fall apart. I would take back control, piece by piece, starting tonight. The city lights sparkled beyond the window, bright and unbothered by my pain. I watched the world go by, anonymous, indifferent, as if to remind me how small my heartbreak really was. But inside, I felt myself changing, growing sharper, stronger, more determined with each passing minute. I closed the laptop and stood, the floor cool beneath my bare feet. I wasn't sure what I'd do next, but I knew I'd do it on my own terms. No one, not Bill, not Rachel, not the polite smiles of strangers, would define me. Bill appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, phone still in hand. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice just a little too light, a little too careful. I smiled, a perfect, practiced smile. "Fine," I said. "Just tired. I think I'll turn in early." He hesitated, searching my face for signs of trouble. I gave him nothing. He shrugged and turned away, already half lost in his other life. I watched him go, my heart steady and my mind resolute. Tonight, I would let him believe his secrets were safe. Tomorrow, I would decide what to do with the truth. The next morning, the world looked ordinary, almost offensively so. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, striping the bed with pale gold. Bill was already up, the scent of fresh coffee drifting in from the kitchen, his movements around the apartment precise and practiced. I lay there for a few moments, listening to the sounds of our life together, spoon tapping against the mug, cabinet doors opening and closing, the muted hum of a morning newscast. But something fundamental inside me had shifted overnight. There was no more hoping, no more questioning. Only a clear sense of purpose, sharp and cold and oddly liberating. I slipped out of bed, pulled on a sweatshirt, and joined Bill at the table. He looked up, surprised to see me awake early, and smiled in that easy way that once felt like home. I smiled back, but I could feel the effort it took to keep my features soft and open. He poured me a cup of coffee, added just the right amount of milk, one of 100 tiny habits we'd built over the years. "You sleep okay?" he asked, tone casual. "Yeah," I replied. "I was thinking, maybe we should celebrate your promotion. You know, do something nice. Invite some friends, your colleagues. It's a big deal." Bill's face lit up, ego stroked. "Yeah, that'd be awesome. We could do a dinner party, get everyone together. What made you think of that?" I shrugged. "Just felt right. You've worked hard, you deserve it." I let my eyes linger on him a moment, giving nothing away. If he saw the steel beneath my smile, he didn't mention it. He launched into plans, menu ideas, a guest list, suggestions for wine pairings. I listened, taking mental notes. I asked questions, encouraged him to dream big. All the while, I was building a different kind of plan in my mind, a party not just for celebration, but for revelation. For the next few days, I played the perfect wife. I called caterers, picked out floral arrangements, even researched the best playlist for an upscale dinner party. Bill was in his element, basking in the excitement, oblivious to the undercurrent swirling just beneath the surface. At work, I was focused, efficient, but my mind often wandered. I found myself replaying the scene at the jewelry store, the moment Rachel's name slipped into the room like a secret finally spoken aloud. I remembered the flash of panic in Bill's eyes, the way he scrambled to regain control. It had taken less than 10 seconds for my world to crack wide open. And yet, here I was, not destroyed, but forged anew. Each evening, I added to my collection of evidence, printouts of receipts, screenshots of messages, copied bank statements. I tucked them into a slim folder, hidden in the back of my closet, a quiet arsenal, waiting for its moment. Bill never suspected a thing. If anything, he seemed relieved by my apparent serenity, eager to believe that the awkwardness of the jewelry store was forgotten. He went about his days as usual, bragging to his friends about the upcoming party, telling colleagues how lucky he was to have a wife who could pull off anything. Sometimes, when he spoke like that, I almost laughed. If only he knew. In the days leading up to the party, I rehearsed what I'd say. I played out a dozen scenarios in my mind, tears and shouting, icy silence, a private confrontation behind closed doors. But none of those fit. I didn't want drama or spectacle. I wanted truth, unvarnished and undeniable. I wanted Bill to face what he'd done, not just with me, but with everyone he cared about. And I wanted to do it with dignity. The night before the party, I sat alone at the kitchen table, folder of evidence in front of me, the city glowing beyond the windows. I thought about all the versions of myself that Bill had known, young and naive, hopeful and in love, tired and disappointed, forgiving and faithful. Each version had believed in a future built together. Now, I was something else, chloride, resolute, and unwilling to settle for less. I poured a glass of wine, swirling it slowly. Outside, life continued as if nothing had changed. Inside, I felt the quiet pulse of anticipation, the certainty that tomorrow, everything would be different. I glanced at the invitation list, picturing the faces of Bill's friends and family, the ones who toasted our anniversaries, who called us their favorite couple. I wondered what they'd think of us after tomorrow. Would they see Bill the way I now saw him? Or would they pity me, another woman wronged, another marriage ending in betrayal? Strangely, I didn't care. For once, this wasn't about anyone else's judgment. This was about reclaiming myself. When I finally turned out the lights and slipped into bed, I felt calm. No more second-guessing, no more wishing for things to go back to how they were. Bill turned over in his sleep, mumbling something about the party, utterly unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon. Tomorrow, I would take back my story, one careful, deliberate step at a time. The evening of the party arrived, and our apartment had never looked more beautiful. The caterers moved in seamless, silent efficiency, arranging platters of gourmet appetizers and uncorking bottles of wine. Candlelight flickered across polished glasses, and fresh flowers filled the rooms with the scent of spring, masking any trace of anxiety that lingered beneath the surface. Guests arrived in waves, Bill's colleagues in tailored suits, our neighbors from down the hall, friends we hadn't seen in months. The laughter was genuine, the congratulations for Bill's promotion warm and unforced. He thrived in the spotlight, shaking hands, accepting compliments, pausing often to wrap an arm around my waist and introduce me as the reason for his success. "You're a lucky man, Bill," said his boss, raising a glass. "She throws a party like no one else." Bill beamed, his pride swelling. I played my part to perfection, smiling, making small talk, topping off glasses, and laughing at the right moments. I could almost pretend the past week hadn't happened, that the illusion of our life together hadn't shattered with one careless word. But underneath my calm exterior, my resolve was ironclad. As the evening reached its peak, I slipped away for a moment, steadying my breath in the hallway. I reached for the folder tucked inside a sideboard drawer, the evidence I'd gathered, the truth I was ready to show the world. For a moment, my hands trembled. But when I looked up and caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, I saw a woman I barely recognized, poised, steady, unafraid. Returning to the living room, I waited for the perfect lull in conversation. The guests were gathered, Bill at the center of a semicircle, basking in admiration. I lifted my wine glass and tapped it gently with a spoon. The room fell quiet, all eyes turning to me. "I just want to thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice carrying across the room. "Bill's worked so hard for this, and I'm proud of him. He's always been generous, to me, to friends, and, as it turns out, to others as well." There was a ripple of polite laughter, but Bill's smile faltered. He glanced at me, eyes questioning. I held up the folded receipt. For instance, not long ago, Bill bought a beautiful necklace. Not for me, but for someone named Rachel. The words dropped into the silence like stones. A couple of guests gasped. Someone coughed. Bill's face drained of color, his mouth working but unable to form words. I set the receipt on the coffee table where everyone could see it, its black ink stark in the glow of candlelight. "There's more, if you're curious," I continued. "Bank statements, emails, dinner reservations. All of it. I only wish I'd found out sooner." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The admiration in Bill's colleagues' faces shifted, first to confusion, then to shock, and finally to something colder. I saw pity, disbelief, even anger. Bill stammered, "It's not. This isn't what it looks like." But I simply raised my hand, calm and measured. "No more lies, Bill. Not tonight." He turned to the crowd, his voice cracking as he scrambled for an explanation. Business dinners, clerical mistakes, misunderstandings. But the more he spoke, the more hollow he sounded. I let him talk himself into silence. One by one, I laid out the evidence, each receipt, each photo, each message, a quiet, relentless cascade of truth. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I simply let the facts stand on their own. As the last piece of evidence fell into place, the room filled with a different kind of silence, not the comfortable hush of friends after a meal, but the heavy, breathless pause of reality setting in. Bill's hands shook as he tried to gather the papers, but no one offered to help. His boss stepped back, a look of disappointment in his eyes. Our friends averted their gazes. I felt no triumph, only a strange, serene detachment. When it was done, I lifted my glass one last time. To generosity, I said quietly, and to the truth that always finds its way out. I let the words linger, then set my glass down and excused myself, walking from the living room with my head held high. Behind me, voices rose in anxious whispers. Chairs scraped against the floor, and Bill's desperate apologies faded as I closed the door gently behind me. For the first time in years, I felt light. Free, not because Bill's betrayal no longer hurt, but because I was finally done carrying its weight. As the elevator doors slid shut, I looked at my reflection in the polished steel. There were no tears. Just the beginning of someone new.